I'm a huge Star Wars fan, always have been. I know a lot of you guys out there are too as well. What I wanted to do is kind of actually talk about some of my theories and what I believe is going to happen in Episode 7. Now, a lot of what I'm going to say is pure speculation, have no knowledge, I haven't heard any rumors or anything, no more than, what I've seen online. And I am going to incorporate some of those that I've seen online as well. But it's mostly going to be like what I think might happen. And I wanted to do it and talk about it basically. So just in case it actually does come true, I can be like, yes! And be like, I knew that was going to happen. And like I said, a lot of this is because of stuff that I've seen online. One major thing that I'm going to talk about was actually brought up by Melvor. He was his idea, and I was like, wow, that actually makes sense. Suffice it to say, this is going to be spoiler ridden. So, and so if you're not wanting to, have the movie possibly spoiled for you, if what I say actually does come true, then you might not want to watch this video. If you've been steering clear from rumors, you might not want to watch this video. So if you want to be completely 100% surprised when the movie actually finally does come out, you may not want to watch this video. So I wanted to warn you right now. So I'm hyped. And that goes without saying. I'm hyped for this movie, have been ever since it was announced, because even as a kid, I was just excited over the possibility of there being an Episode 7. And I was just fascinated by that prospect of that happening. What would the story be if it continued? And there was always rumors that there would be a sequel trilogy. Even after the prequels were finished, right after Episode 3 came out, there were speculation and rumors that there would be a sequel trilogy. But George Lucas always shot them down. But from the beginning, there was talk of George Lucas, even from his own mouth and in writing, that he was planning on doing a sequel trilogy. And some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is probably going to incorporate that. Well, it is going to incorporate that, because this is stuff that he talked about, 30 years ago. And a lot of this stuff kind of comes full circle. And so, yeah, and I've always been hyped for an Episode 7. So I cannot wait till this movie comes out. And I just hope it's not one of those things where you're let down like in Episode 1. I really wanted to like that movie when it came out, and I think I tricked myself into liking that movie when it first came out because it was Star Wars. So you put the Star Wars goggles aside, and that movie just wasn't good storytelling in my opinion. But that's another subject for another day. Episode 7. First and foremost, unlike a lot of the novels and stuff where there's a Jedi Order established, there's a new government established. Now, there may be like a new government or something, but I think primarily it's almost going to be like a dystopian type of galaxies. Things are just even more run down than they were in the original trilogy. War has been happening for decades now, and at this point, 50 years. So the galaxy is just going to be just a broken down mess. That's what I think the world's going to be like. Very dystopian, and nothing has gone right. You gotta realize, the Emperor has died. Yes, the Force, has been balanced, and I still have issues with that whole thing. But there is going to be a power vacuum. Just because the Emperor dies and Vader dies, it's not going to be, the Empire crumbles. There's going to be a void right there where power hungry, admirals and generals and, Grand Moffs, to take from Star Wars lore, are going to vie for that power. And so you're going to maybe even have factions of the Empire breaking off into different factions, or maybe still one strong empire. The Empire's just not going to go away. That was one small fleet, or maybe, considered a large fleet at that Battle of Endor. So, in my opinion, it's still going to be, the Empire's still going to be a force. Now, I also think that we're going to see a lot of parallels. In my opinion, there should have been more parallels from Episode 1, or I should say the prequel trilogy, to the original trilogy. There are a lot of themes should have been revisited when George Lucas put the original prequel trilogy together, and I think he missed a lot of opportunities. Now, this is going to be the huge spoiler I think that I'm going to probably maybe reveal that I personally think is going to become true. And this was presented by Melvor, and the more I think about it, the more I think that it's probably likely. And you know, this may spoil the movie for a lot of people. So again, warning. A lot of people were thinking that the girl on the desert planet, and let's face it, this desert planet's Tatooine. You ain't fooling nobody, J.J. Abrams. You're not fooling anyone. The desert planet's Tatooine. And again, that ties to parallels from episode 4, starting off on a desert planet. Okay, Tatooine. We all know it's Tatooine. You see the moisture vaporizers in the background. Now again, obviously, I guess if it's a desert planet, you can still use that same technology. But let's face it, this is Tatooine. It makes sense from a storytelling standpoint to revisit Tatooine because of the parallels that I'm about to reveal right here. And that is that the main girl, people are speculating that this is the daughter of Han Solo and Princess Leia. I don't think that it is. I think it's Luke Skywalker's daughter. Okay, it makes perfect sense. Okay, and again, thanks Melvor for this. This was, you know, he's the one that brought this idea to me. It makes sense. Okay, and if you okay, you start. She's a Jedi, or has Jedi abilities, Force sensitive. She starts on this quest to. Supposedly, from leaked stories, she goes on this quest to find the identity of the lightsaber that she finds. She goes on this quest to find herself. She becomes a Jedi in training. She's from Tatooine. Tatooine, that's the desert planet. It makes sense that it would be Luke Skywalker's daughter. And I think that that's going to be the huge reveal. You know, whether it be in this first movie or the second movie in the trilogy. I do. I think it's going to be revealed that it's Luke Skywalker's daughter. And it supposedly Luke Skywalker is in hiding somewhere on some planet. And, you know, she goes on a quest to find him with the help of another character who's a defected stormtrooper. And this defected stormtrooper, I'm really hoping that this is not the case because it just seems like it's fan service and a little too convenient. But I think what they're going to do, and I'm hoping they don't, but I think what they're going to do is make that character Lando Calrissian's son. If you look at pictures of the actor, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the actor's name, Boya, I think, or something like that. With Billy D. Williams, they do have very similar facial features. I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to say that this is Lando Calrissian's son. Why can't it just be another character, you know, a new character? And you know, I think this character is going to be a Force sensitive as well. And so, you know, Lando Calrissian is not the only black guy in the galaxy. I wouldn't think so. You don't have to necessarily tie the new black character as being in his family line, you know. I just don't think it's the same thing George Lucas kind of did with C-3PO in, it was convenient that Anakin made him. You know, it's a huge galaxy, you know. Why does it gotta have these things, you know, these different lines of story interconnect with each other? Now, some things it makes sense, obviously, but on things like that, I just think it's still too convenient that Lando's son would run into either Luke's son or Leia's son, or daughter, I should say, because that's going to happen. It's either, you know, the main girl is either Leia's daughter, Leia and Han's daughter, or Luke's daughter. And I just think that's a little too convenient for them to all run into each other. But hey, you know what? Maybe it's the will of the Force. You know, you could always. That's a good storytelling. What's the word I'm looking for? Crutch, if you will. You know, it's the will of God. It's the will of the Force. It's the will of a force of nature that you can't that has this omnipresent ability to make things happen, determinate on its will. So you know, I guess that's always a possibility. It was the will of the Force that brought them all together. But yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. Now, overarching villain. Now there's one thing about this trilogy that you have to have it do, in my opinion. It can't just be some standalone, okay, this is what happens to the characters next. Okay, it if you're going to make a new Star Wars trilogy, you have to make it tie into the other ones to where it's an overarching theme. It's an overarching story. Okay, you can't have just 2 trilogies here as an overarching story and then just a separate trilogy here with its own story. Not if you're using the same characters and stuff. Now, you could do that if it was a trilogy set thousands of years in the past or 1,000 years in the future where there's not really any connection. Okay, fine. But if you're using the same characters, you need to have an overarching theme or story. Now, for instance, the original trilogy, 4, 5, and 6, it was a story about Luke. Okay, it was Luke's story. It was him coming from nothing, a coming of age story of him finding out who he is and redeeming his father. That was the overall theme of that trilogy. Now, the prequel trilogy, when it was made, turned the entire Star Wars movies on its end, because at that point, when you couple the prequel trilogy with the original trilogy, it then becomes a 6-part movie about the rise and fall and then redemption of Anakin Skywalker. It becomes his legacy at that point. Okay? So, if you're going to add another trilogy with these characters or the lineage of these characters, it needs to have something overarching. You know, the entire Star Wars saga is going to automatically become what at that point? The nature of the Force, the rise and fall of a particular family. I mean, I don't know. Just have to wait and see until the movie comes out. But I think there's going to have to be something that connects all that. I think Darth Plagueis is going to somehow factor into this. Because if you think about it, why set up that character in Episode 1 and Episode 3? Why set up that character only to not really explore him? Of course they explored him in the books and stuff like that, but I'm talking about really explore him, cinematically. And besides, all the books and stuff, they're thrown out the window anyway. There was too many context clues brought up. He could control life and death. Okay? That right there tells you that, hey, maybe the effing dude's immortal or something, Maybe the dude, he could cheat death. Palpatine says, he could stop others from dying, but he couldn't save himself. Well, maybe he did save himself. Okay? So, if that's the case, if he could control life and death, maybe he could control his own life and death. Perhaps that's how they tie everything together. I think that's what's going to happen. You're going to see Darth Plagueis at some point during this new trilogy. Whether it be the first movie or second movie, or maybe it's a big reveal or something at some other point. But I think it's possible we see Darth Plagueis. I really do. You see in the original trilogy especially, the line between good and evil is very, 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 very well defined. Light side, dark side. Don't do these things, you'll be good. Do these things, you'll be evil. And it was very well defined. I'm hoping personally that that's a little less defined in this new trilogy, and you maybe as a Force user you can channel that anger a little bit. You can channel that hate, but still be a force of good. Because all those are emotions that make people people. Maybe the Jedi just didn't embrace the Force the way they should and made things a little too black and white, which lead to people misusing it and becoming Sith and becoming evil and dark Jedi. So I really think that that's what they're going to do, is tackle those types of themes like that and can maybe blur the lines between good and evil. And maybe that's what true balance of the Force is. Maybe Anakin didn't balance the Force in Episode 6. Maybe the real balance of the Force comes in this new trilogy, where you take light and you take dark and you merge them, and there's no more lines. True balance of the Force. So, those are my theories right now of Star Wars Episode 7. I'm sure I'll have some more of these types of videos as the movie draws near. I hope I wasn't a little too long-winded for you guys, and hope you enjoyed. I will talk to you soon.